Months back, Xbox and Nintendo announced their intentions to increase the prices for their games, for their accessories, and in Microsoft's case, their consoles. $70 to $80 for new games and $600 for an Xbox Series X were once looming threats that are now our present. And if that wasn't bad enough, at the time of writing this, Nintendo announced that they would once again be raising the prices for their accessories and their Nintendo Switch line of consoles. Not the Switch 2, the first Nintendo Switch, you know, the one that's literally 8 years old. Raised prices like this is why I made a video back in April called Don't Waste $80, Go Retro. A video with a admittedly very sensationalist title that I made to 1. Show off my gaming collection, and 2. Show people that you don't need to always play the newest games when the older games are just as good, while also being cheaper to boot most of the times. The overall response for that video had been pretty positive, with only a few instances of negative reactions, and the occasional instances of very negative reactions, some bordering on disturbing. In the midst of all that though, I did see this reoccurring complaint that would pop up in regards to retro gaming, and that was its price of entry. According to them, retro gaming is just far too expensive to get into, apparently several times more expensive than modern gaming. And to that, I'd have to say that they're wrong. Not completely, but mostly. And in this video, I'm going to show you just how cheap I managed to get the majority of the consoles I showed off in that video, as well as how to potentially get these kinds of prices yourself. Now, let's get started. This is my PlayStation 2 Slim. I bought her back in 2021, which is around the same time that most of the consoles that I'll showcase in this video were purchased. 2021 to 2023, that's when I bought most of them. During this time, I was in the midst of working my previous job, where I was making just enough money that I could have some extra set aside to use for whatever silly fun things my man-child heart desired. This meant things like parts or equipment for my computer, food from the groceries, or more often than not, the dangerously convenient DoorDash, and of course, games. I had a Switch Lite at the time, so I bought plenty of games for that. And in late 2021, I managed to get my hands on a PlayStation 5 thanks to Sony and their absolutely genius method to make buying one from their website a lottery sort of thing. I won that lottery, and I was given the honor to spend $500 on a console that I barely play nowadays. But the one gaming thing that I desired more than buying new fancy games was older ones. Throughout my gaming career, as I grew from child to adult, I would receive and I would lose games or gaming consoles, whether from me selling them to buy newer games, trading them with friends or with classmates, or life would just find some other way to take them off my hands. And as I grew older, old enough to work and have the money and free will to buy what I wanted, I found myself yearning to own the consoles that used to be a part of my collection once more. Now, I don't know what happened to cause it, but I remember just wanting to buy this PS2 Slim. And when I finally made the decision and tapped the buy button, it was over. My retro gaming descent had officially begun. I bought the PS2 Slim, then I bought the PS2 Fat. Then I ended up buying an original Xbox. Then I got an Xbox 360 Slim, then a Game Boy Advance, then a DS Lite, then a Game Boy Color. It got out of hand really quickly. I've seen meth heads more responsible with their money than this. But yeah, before I knew it, I owned pretty much every single old console that used to be a part of my life as a kid. It's by no means a complete representation. There are some missing pieces, but in my eyes, my collection is complete for now. Now, I named off like 7 consoles that come from all walks of life, from handheld to home console, Sony to Nintendo. They're all different, but there should be one thing that brings them all together. Considering these are all retro consoles, it's gotta be their price, right? After all, these are ancient relics that are practically 1 in a million in our modern era. They probably command outrageous prices that only the richest of the rich could ever afford. $200, $300, $400, heck, maybe even $500. $500, the same price as a PlayStation 5. That surely must be what a PlayStation 2 costs in this day and age, right? Well, this PlayStation 2 Slim I bought back in 2021 cost me only $60. And here's the kicker. It wasn't even just the bare essentials. I ended up getting the PS2, a controller, 4 games, and a light gun as a cherry on top. For for the same price as a game back on the PS4 and Xbox One. Actually, a little bit more than that, got to take into account shipping and handling and stuff. I got myself pretty much everything I needed to have a good time. This bundle right here that I bought can last a normal adult like 2, maybe even 3 or 4 weeks. And the games that it came with weren't even shovelware. Jak and Daxter 1, Devil May Cry 1, Mega Man 8 are nothing to scoff at. Well, maybe Mega Man 8, but I can't. That's personally my childhood Mega Man game right there. Dude, I freaking love that game. Crappy voice acting and all. This is a shockingly impressive purchase. Even just ignoring the extras and focusing on the console and maybe the controller alone, I think that's a very good price. Looks like all those years of putting all my skill points into luck in Megaten games is finally paying off. Now let's move on to my PS2 Fat, and spoiler alert, the haul was not as exciting. On the surface at least. I love the Slim, but I ended up getting a Fat PS2 a few weeks later because I realized that having access to the hard drive bay could prove to be quite advantageous down the line if I choose to mod my console, which I did, another spoiler alert. I looked around on OfferUp, which I should mention was the main platform that I looked around on. No real reason, honestly. I just bought something from there once and I kind of just stuck with it during that point in time. So I searched around on OfferUp and like 5 minutes later, I find the listing for the PS2 that I would eventually come to buy. It came with 2 official controllers, a memory card, and an official network adapter. The price? $50. $10 less than the PS2 Slim. Now, of course, it didn't come with any games as far as I could remember, but like the Slim, I think that's an amazing deal for just the console alone. It even has a network adapter, and those things could sell for like around $15 to $20 by themselves. Wow. So far, batting 2 for 0 here. Next consoles I'm going to have to speed through since honestly they're not as exciting in regards to like extras or other goodies that they may have came with. They're pretty bare bones. So there was my original Xbox, came with an original controller and a copy of Fable, cost me $50. Then there was the Xbox 360 Slim, which came with a controller and all the wires, and that also cost me $50. Got that one in person, and no, I did not get stabbed. Then a Game Boy Advance, it was missing the battery cover, but for only $40, I really couldn't complain. Then I got a beautiful refurbished DS Lite from one of my coworkers for $70. They actually ended up including one of those carts that have like 500 games in them, so that was a pretty nice bonus that I didn't even ask for. Then lastly, I came across this Game Boy Color at a local collector shop for $50. It's incredibly gross, and honestly, I don't even know if I'd recommend anyone to buy a Game Boy Color of this caliber for that price, but I personally bought it with the intention to mod it in the future. Same with the Game Boy Advance, so I took the bullet with pride. And as a bonus, I'll throw in my Wii U and new 3DS, which I got for $80 and $100 respectively. The Wii U was bare bones, but the new 3DS came with like 3 games and an amiibo, and to top it all off, it was hacked. They're not as old as the other consoles I showed off, but they're leading into my main point, so whatever, YOLO. All these consoles, with the exception of the new 3DS, were less than $100. Sometimes half that. This almost completely debunks the biggest gotcha that people brought up in the comments of my first video, that retro gaming is just too expensive. Now, I understand why someone that doesn't understand or know anything about retro gaming would say that, since some retro vintage things can fetch high prices that far exceed what most sane individuals would even consider paying for, but that isn't always the case. In fact, most of the times it isn't. Unless that's what you're looking for. Because retro gaming is only as expensive as you want it to be. And what do I mean about that? Well, when looking around for retro games, just like looking around for any other types of deals like on your Amazons or your antique roadshows, there are several factors that could come into play. And these, what I personally found, are platform, demand, Nintendo, patience, and most importantly, luck. Some can majorly impact prices and others not so much. First up, we're going to start with platform, which is pretty much where you just buy things. Think like eBay, a retro game shop, Swap Meet, or in my case, OfferUp. Stuff like that. These are all spots that you can find retro games with ease, but despite that, they are not all created equal. Some of these places I actually wouldn't recommend unless the thing that they have that you want are super rare and hard to find anywhere else. Places like booth set conventions, GameStop, these places know the value of their games and may sometimes even come across as predatory. They know what you're there for. They know you've got nostalgia on the mind, and because of that, they may command some outrageous prices. Now, that's not always the case, but in my experience, you're not likely to get a deal from these locations. Instead, try places like yard sales, antique shops, and especially marketplaces like OfferUp, Mercari, or Facebook Marketplace. These places are full of people that either don't know value or don't care about value and are just trying to get rid of their items. You likely won't catch any rare finds, but if you're looking for the bare minimum like a console, controllers, and some basic games, these are the places to go. Next, we have demand. Demand is exactly as it says on the tin, whether people want something or not. If something is higher in demand, then prepare for its prices to be higher as a result. And vice versa as well. If something is not that much in demand, then you could probably expect it to be pretty cheap. Demand can be affected by any number of things, and most of them are obvious. Trends can come in and come out, and growing nostalgia for generations of consoles and their respective library of games can be a part of those trends. Things like GameCube, PS2, Xbox, heck, even PS3, 360, and Wii on a lesser scale are starting to gain popularity again, at least going off of social media. So those games and consoles could potentially rise in price or be a bit more hard to find if people are buying them up to relive their childhoods. It's not guaranteed, but this type of demand is something to take into account if you want to buy something retro. So many little things like this can potentially fluctuate prices. It could be really meta and very inconsistent. Here's an example. Things like Tony Hawk's American Wasteland on Xbox 360. It's a great game. In fact, it's one of my favorite Tony Hawk games. I know it's not really highly regarded in the community, but it's a great game that's mostly off the radar now. But it rose drastically in price earlier in the year because it was revealed that it could be used to soft mod your console. Stuff like that, it can be really weird. Something that's not weird and pretty easy to determine is Nintendo. Yeah, so kind of funny that Nintendo has an entire section dedicated to themselves. And that's mainly due to the fact that Nintendo products always manage to be expensive when they are expected to be cheap, whether it be on their random eShop sales that happen like once a year or secondhand. Especially secondhand. You can find a loose disc for a game like Melee and still see weirdos selling it for like $50. And some ways, I kind of understand why prices are high. Nintendo games, more times than not, are some of the most fun that you can get from gaming. And Nintendo also has this sort of unique status compared to Sony and Microsoft. When you see Nintendo, you know that you are guaranteed to be getting some serious quality. Also, since their games are more on the kid-friendly side, more people are expected to have been exposed to them while younger, meaning a higher nostalgia and higher demand. Console prices like the GameCube and Wii can also be pretty high too, as well as their respective accessories. I've even seen N64 and its games on the higher side too. Whatever the case, if your interest lies in anything retro Nintendo, then be prepared to either spend more money, do a lot of researching, or rolling those sleeves up and doing a lot of bartering with the seller. There's value in these items, so finding a deal is not going to be easy. What also won't be easy is patience. This is likely one of the most important traits that you could have when looking for old games like this. If you're not finding anything that meets your criteria, whether it be price, condition, or whatever, it might be easy to just give in and buy something that doesn't reach any or all of your requirements. And I personally recommend against doing that, unless it's something incredibly rare and one of a kind. But some people just don't have that control. It's hard to practice patience since it lies much deeper than just retro game collecting, but if you can learn the art, it could help a lot, whether collecting or not. I personally have my own troubles with it, and if I waited around a bit more for deals, I likely could have gotten a lot more consoles that gave me more bang for my buck, just like with the PS2 Slim that I bought. But honestly, at the end of the day, it all could probably just come down to the one factor that we can't control: luck. That PS2 Slim that I just mentioned, I honestly had no intention to find a deal of that magnitude. At least I think it was a really good deal. I just opened up OfferUp and scrolled for like a couple of minutes and boom, there it was. No searching, no planning, no nothing. And honestly, this might be the case for a lot of your good deals you may come across. Sometimes you may be searching for something and then you'll find something else that you've never expected. Of course, don't just carelessly let luck dictate your entire life, unless you roll that way like me. But if you do put a little bit of thought and effort into your searches, these crazy deals may come to reward your discipline. Or maybe putting no effort can yield you the same results, and who frickin' knows? I never really got a chance to talk about games on their own. I will say that's when it could get even more varied in price. From rarity, demand, whether it's a loose disc or complete in box, all that. There are way more variables, but I will say this. Unless it's a very rare game like Rule of Rose or just Nintendo games in general, you are likely to get most games for pretty reasonable prices. Reasonable, but varied. For example, I looked around for a copy of Tony Hawk's Underground because the new THPS 3 and 4 remake got me feeling some type of nostalgic, and I found copies ranging from $15, $20, $25, and so on. And it didn't really seem to matter whether it was loose or not. The prices were just all over the place. I think this might be what these sellers personally valued the games at, but yeah, the main goal is to just find the cheapest prices. And here are a few tips that don't really fit into any category or need that much in regards to elaboration. I digress. And that is about all I have to offer in regards to things like hints. Honestly, a lot of this I just said seems like it could all just be chalked up to common sense, but sometimes hearing that common sense from an outside source might help it stick. So if it does help you out, then great, perfect. And if it doesn't, then, well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess I could stand outside the nearby Target and let everyone that didn't get anything out of my tips punch me in the balls. I don't know. It'll probably be hard to do that. They're not even letting kids that sell chocolate stand outside there now. Now, I'm going to take the time right now to address a few things that I already did in the Don't Waste $80 video, and I do know this is a quasi-sequel to that, but despite that, there will still be some people who didn't watch it. And if you're one of those people, this portion of the video is for you. No, retro games can't replace all games. It's crazy to assume so. So many incredible games have come out in recent memory, but even if that is the case, you don't have to limit your gaming taste to only modern stuff, especially if new prices are going to be a cause of concern for you. There can be a healthy balance, and personally, I play way more older games with the odd new game thrown in every now and then, but of course, everyone's different. Next thing is emulation. If you want to play old games, but you don't want to deal with the hardware for some reason, then that's totally cool. That's something that you could totally do. You can buy the game, back it up, or find a backup elsewhere, then play it on RetroArch or whatever emulator of your choice. And sometimes it could actually be preferable. I play nearly all my old games through emulation nowadays to take advantage of things like higher resolutions, texture packs, save states, and I tend to limit playing on the actual consoles for things like light gun games that don't really run well on emulation, other sorts of hardware perks and advantages, or sometimes just plain vibes. Can't beat Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 on a CRT. And lastly, if retro games, whether it be the consoles, games, or both, do become incredibly rare or pricey, there will be a point where it just can no longer be helped. And whether it's reached that point for you already, I will leave it up to your discretion. And honestly, a lot of the games on these older consoles do not exist on modern platforms. I honestly wouldn't even think it's a bad thing if you found other ways of playing those games. Like I said in my first video, just play retro. I don't fucking care how you do it. Just don't be a sucker that these corporations can exploit endlessly. With all that said, I am going to begin to wrap up this video. Now, as I showed you, old games from the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox era can be a lot cheaper than you think. Considering that they are old, making an assumption that the games and consoles are super duper expensive could likely be a safe assumption. But that's all it is. It's an assumption. which is what many people in the comments from my older videos said, sometimes with hard confidence that what they were saying is true. So that's the biggest reason why I wanted to make this video, to hopefully clear the air. I doubt it will, but it's better than sitting on my ass and doing nothing about it. Considering a lot of these consoles I bought were 2 to 4 years ago, there are chances that the prices can raise the longer time goes on. I did personally do some research for this video, and my research yielded results that are mostly similar, if not a little bit more expensive than back in 2021. Despite it still being around the same prices as before, if you're interested in getting into retro gaming, the time to do it is as soon as possible. Nostalgia and just general demand for these consoles are still ongoing, especially the demands. But yeah, that's it. If there's anything I didn't really clarify, or if I just forgot to talk about something in this video, let me know in the comments. Hopefully I could get back to you on that. And thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day. And remember, retro is only as expensive as you want it to be. See you around.